So on to the lecture itself, titled The Big Society. The Big Society should be recognised as key Conservative Party policy. Most people believe it to be David Cameron's personal mission while he is Prime Minister of Great Britain. Although it is a policy which is part of the Conservative Party and the Liberal Democrat coalition, it is seen mostly as Cameron's personal mission. It's to be recognised as the big society and not big government. A lot of people think that this vague phrase is just a catch-all phrase with no explanation. Big government in itself alludes to the state being involved in local people's lives and maybe local authority and local council political livelihoods as being happening far too often. David Cameron states that the big society and his Conservative Party agree is a restoration of traditional principles whereby we come away from a state-controlled a state-controlled society, and personal freedom has much more relevance. It's important also to realise that this cannot be achieved in the short term. This isn't a policy you will bring in by the end of 2010, as it was, to be achieved by mid-2011. It's very much an ongoing process and should be seen as a long-term policy agenda. Part of the reason for this is that David Cameron and the people who support the big society certainly see the big society ideology as being an absolute sea change in British society at the very core, not just a political policy. One of the main reasons for this is that the big society is seen as a form of social recovery against the so-called broken Britain. Broken Britain, a term often bandied about in the press and in the media, perhaps far too often, relates in this instance to a rise in rates in crime and low-level crime such as vandalism, even to one of the problems that we have widespread, especially in our cities, to knife crime, knife cultures, just a total lack of respect that a lot of people, young people and older people, seem to have for the society that they live in. It's one of David Cameron's ideologies that the big society and its restoration of traditional principles will actually try and eradicate this broken Britain ideology. One of the most important things to realise about the policy, despite the fact that it's big society and it's taken away from the government, some power, so to speak, is that there's definitely a focus on the individual and the voluntary sector. The focus on the individual here is more to do with, less about giving the individual more work to do, but more to do with giving the individual more choice. And the voluntary sector, David Cameron hopes to utilise an army of volunteers or to encourage people to become volunteers in order to enable the big society to actually take place. This is one of the key aspects of the big society policy. Part of this big society is the voluntary renaissance. As well as restoring traditional principles, as has already been discussed for all UK citizens, at the very core of this idea is to empower each individual to make their own decisions. This can be from very, very small scale. So for instance, David Cameron, as part of the big society ideology, he may want individuals to take it upon themselves to volunteer to even scrub the stairs where they stay, or to go out and sweep the streets where they stay, in order to make their little microcosm of society a wee bit better. This can even go to signing up for a volunteer group and then helping out around your local library, helping out in local institutions. Things that we all have the power to do, but it could be argued that a lot of us maybe don't want to do or don't have the time to actually achieve. This is part of the big society ideology. This is one of the points that most people can find argument with, but at the very core, it's to empower each individual to make their own decisions. That's the way it's certainly stated by David Cameron. One of the points about this voluntary renaissance and this idea that bringing power back to the people, it's actually seen with quite widespread popularity, so much so that the opposition party, namely we're talking about the Labour Party here, they even see certain advantages to the policy. Despite it being very much a personal mission of David Cameron, very much a Conservative Party policy, the Labour Party, they can see good things in this, and maybe that shows the strength of the actual big society ideology as a policy. Certainly something worth considering. So, as has been discussed, very much the focus is on the individual, very much about taking power from the state and giving it back to the people, and very much a sort of sense that there is a voluntary and personal renaissance. That is the part of the big society ideology which makes up its core. The decentralisation of power and the progression of localism. At a very real level, this could mean the promotion of certain social enterprises, maybe even ideas such as we already have in place, such as credit unions or cooperative societies. Again, very much a traditional and Victorian principle. This is something that is actively encouraged by the big society, and particularly the points about credit unions and the such. These are the points that opposition parties are in agreement with. You could argue that there is very much a civic responsibility at the core. That this civic responsibility being that if you're part of the big society, the big British society, then you have a personal duty and civic responsibility to maintain such a society. And as I say, whether that be helping at your local library or helping anywhere, or even opting to go with a credit union as opposed to maybe a national bank, all of these things can help your civic responsibility. One of the facts about the big society ideology as well was that 25% of public sector contracts are to be given to the voluntary sector or the private sector wherever applicable. This could be seen as an absolute dedication to the promotion of this rise in volunteers in Britain, so much so that public sector contracts and public sector wages are being cut by 1/4 in order to go to the volunteer sector or the private sector. How it will pan out, time will tell. But this is one of the commitments which David Cameron and the Conservative Party have put forward in order to make the big society happen. So much so they're willing to slash the size of the UK public sector. One of the more focused ideologies of the big society, because it can appear quite vague, it can appear quite elusive at times, is the big society bank. These are plans to set up a dedicated big society bank by the end of April of this year, and it's still ongoing as a piece of policy. There was an investment promise by the government of up to £100 million for community and voluntary projects from this bank. So, from this big society bank for the whole of the United Kingdom, £100 million, quite a large sum of money, will be dedicated to voluntary projects and community projects in order to promote, again, the sense of self-ownership of your society, of your community, and the voluntary projects will, they might even put in a wage structure into some volunteer organisations in order to encourage people to get on board, thus helping the big society as a policy. And one of the quotes from the Big Society Bank is that they aim to get socially responsible, everyday savers to invest in the bank. Here being that you then have loyal customers, loyal clients that you can rely on to put money into the bank and to take money out, just as a normal bank works. Only the outcome of this, it's not that they invest the money in the market or in an international market. It's certainly not the idea anyway. It's more that they invest the money back into the society. Almost back into the people who put money into the bank, almost as a massive widespread credit union ideology. The Big Society Bank is certainly one of the most positive things to come out of this policy, and as time goes on, we'll find out how well that works. But it can be praised for its vision as part of the policy, and although it takes power away from government, perhaps that's not a bad thing when you have ideas such as the Big Society Bank.